This is a project that I've been working on for a little while now, and I'm excited to finally be able to share it. I want to say from the get-go that this project has been done with my colleague Leland Hill, who's a professor of graphic design at Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. He wasn't able to make it to the conference, but I do want to acknowledge that we did put the whole presentation together. It's very much his partner in this. So. He's not dead or anything. He's just on vacation. So he's 9-month faculty. You know how it is. All right. So this is our beautiful building at VCUarts Qatar. My office is this window, I think. And I start with this not only because it's a very nice professional photo of our building, but it's also kind of it's important to contextualize this within the location that we are. We are an arts and design school, a branch of Virginia Commonwealth University, but we're located in Doha, Qatar, part of the Education City, which I'll talk a little bit about more later. But it's a group of 5-6 American universities that share essentially one campus, each with kind of their specialty. Ours is art and design. So before I start talking about this, it's also kind of important to contextualize what comics are in the Middle East, or how I'm talking about comics within the Middle Eastern context, or the MENA context. MENA being Middle East, North Africa region. The image on the far right there is the cover of Metro. Most people who write about comics in the Middle East they cite this as probably the first kind of graphic novel that was geared towards adults that came out. You know, there's like in kind of a contemporary idea of what we understand a graphic novel to be. It's by Magdi al-Shafi. You know, this is right there. That's Magdi. Although the story in it, and I would encourage you to read, it's been translated into many languages now. It's a great little story. It's kind of a crime noir story. And it was written in 2007, or published in 2007. And at the time, and this was of course before the revolution, and it got the publisher arrested, and it got Magdi heavily fined for the content. So that kind of gives you a sense of how some of the things we have to navigate when we're discussing comics within that context. Magdi has since then gone on to to be one of the founding members of Cairo Comics, which is one of the region's largest and I think most, I guess, authentic comics cons. So there's some images from Magdi at different events. After the revolution, I guess, as the revolution was kind of taking hold, about the same time as Magdi's publication, a few years later, some publications got going that were focused on comics in the region. Tuk on the far right, or I guess you're left over there, that was one of the better known ones. It was published from 2011 to 2020. 2020. It had 16 issues. It ran into a whole bunch of problems with the Egyptian government, through the various areas of the Egyptian government, and so they finally kind of ceased publication in 2020. San Mandal is still in publication technically, except for they haven't done an issue in quite some time. It's been in publication since about 2007. They're currently fighting lawsuits and some censorship problems. This was a comic endeavor, I guess, that came out of the Middle East. It came out of Kuwait. The 99 was the idea of Naif al-Muwata. He decided he wanted to create superheroes, comic superheroes, based on this idea of the 99 tenets of Islam, or the tenets of Allah. And so he created each of these characters. He even got approval from the Saudi, Ministry of culture to, say this isn't a blasphemous thing. This is a, so, and it was quite successful. It was widely praised, international press. Barack Obama mentioned it even in an address as president, that this was one of the, this new version of, Islamicism, but still he ran into problems, even though he went through did basically all of, tried to get all of, tried to avoid all of these problems from the get-go, but still then there was a fatwa was called against him and the publisher, and not a fatwa like, Salman Rushdie. This, just it was basically just saying, it's against Islamic law, and he won both, the initial lawsuit and then the appeal, but that was a little bit too much, and the publication ceased in 2015. And I forgot to mention, I mean, it met with, this was, a JLA, a Justice League of America 99 crossover. So, it crossed over with the DC universe, which, that's pretty cool for, something that it was more than just a little blip in the, in comics within the region. Since that time, there's definitely, from the regional perspective, there's definitely an interest in, I guess the popular culture that surrounds comics. These are some images from the Middle East Film and Comic-Con just this last year. It was the first big one they've had since COVID, and it was massive. I mean, I went to it. It was just like you'd imagine any Comic-Con anywhere in the world, just a huge hotel ballroom packed full of people, it was really kind of fun. If Leland was here, he'd be able to tell you who those people were. He's the one with the encyclopedic knowledge of comics. I know the guy in the hat was the guy who draws Invincible. Anyway, and that guy drew Batman for a while. I don't know. Leland would know exactly their names and why they're a big deal and why they're on this slide. But it was a big deal that those two artists were there and doing this drawing workshop together. We also have in Doha, this was in Abu Dhabi, by the way, I'm sorry I didn't mention that. We have in Doha, we have something we call Geekdom, which is kind of a very small version of a Comic-Con, but it is also this idea of the film, the popular culture, all of this stuff that has come out of comics. It's very, very much interesting. Also manga, very, very big. In Doha itself, in Qatar, there was a comic book shop there for a little bit, for about a year. And then it suddenly closed. Qatar has a real kind of fraught relationship with publications and books. And so nobody really knows why it closed. It might have been for economic reasons. It might have been because of government reasons. It might have been because of self-censorship. Nobody really understands why it closed. But yeah, it was open for about a year and ended up closing. Leland knows a little bit more about this, so if he was here, he would have been able to tell you a little bit more about the history. But the long and short of it is nobody really understands exactly why it closed so suddenly. So this is where the idea for our collection came from. When we were returning from COVID, I really wanted to get back involved with the physical collection again. I wanted students to be able to get involved with the physical collection. Working remotely, it really made me realize how important that physical collection was. And so I came back with this idea. I wanted to build a comics collection. I've been a comics fan my entire life. I've collected comics most of my life. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of comics like my colleague does. So, which is why I asked Leland to come in and help with this project, because I was like, I need a core of comics, of graphic novels and comics, to open up this collection with. And so when he came in, we kind of looked at what we had, a small collection already in the library. So we looked at what we had, where they were located, and we determined that we needed a separate collection that was apart from away from the stacks. I'm sure I don't need to explain this to librarians, but like take this example here of these graphic novels lined up. Well, I guess can't probably see, but they're not in the PN 719, whatever that comic designation is in the PNs. They're, they're Ds, LC, of course. M's, or I can't even read, but they go throughout the schedule. So the idea is that these books would be lost in our stacks. There's no way to make this like kind of as a discoverable collection or a browsable collection when all these things are scattered throughout our stacks. So we quickly determined that needed to be a core of the collection, that it needed to be separate somehow. We also looked at where comics, where people go to get comics, and that's the comic book store. This idea of the comic book store, it's not only a place of, it's a place of cultural exchange. It's a place where you can discover things. It's a browsable collection. And so we looked at some of the ways that people, like how comic book stores were organized in different ways, how we might be able to try to mimic that browsability in our own collection. We also wanted to show off the breadth of what a comic collection could be. We wanted to get away from this idea of, capes and tights, this idea that it's all superheroes. We wanted to show that, Persepolis is a classic example of, an autobiographical story told beautifully through the medium of, of sequential and comic art. We had cookbooks. We found, we ordered a bunch of cookbooks. Understanding rhetoric. We got a book on that. We wanted to show that the medium's not just limited to talking about Batman and Superman and all the rest. We wanted to show that it can be used to talk about basically any subject, any narrative. So what we did was we put together. I don't know if you want to read our school's vision, mission, and values, but there they are if you want to. The idea was what we decided that if we couched this in the school's mission, vision, and values and presented it to, well, first the library director, we would have a much better chance at, I guess, getting this collection out of the stacks and into some sort of unique space. And the school has had a history of this. I mean, it's very supportive of ideas like this. I got a couple pictures from different things in our school. We have what's called the Tinker Lab up in the corner, where it's a place where students can come in and work with all kinds of different gadgetry and stuff. We have our materials library, which is a separate library, part of VCUarts Qatar Libraries, but it's, all materials based. And so these were both projects that came out from this kind of same idea that Leland and I were trying to work on, this something that could really work within the mission and values of the school. Well, I guess I kind of, okay. I revealed the reveal before I needed to do so. So what we did, we went to the library director with this idea. She was very excited about it, gave us some money to hire an alumni interior design, former interior design student. And so she came up with this, Yasmin Sokole there. And so this is the basic. So she gave us a study room. She said, you can have one of the study rooms, which is kind of prized real estate in our library. So you can have one of those study rooms and hire a interior designer to redesign that so it fits the collection. And so she did. And then she created these renderings, which we then sent to the dean's office. And the dean said, okay, yeah, and he gave us money to actually build this thing, which I never thought would happen, but it did. So I think we hit on a couple things. I think it was the end of the fiscal year, number one. Number two, they were down in enrollment post-COVID, and they wanted something to be like, to show off all the, high school kids. Look, we've got a comic book library here at our school. So yeah, I don't know, but so here's the reality. This was shortly after we reopened past COVID, so we're all, of course, wearing masks. There's Leland, my partner in this whole thing, and there's the outside of the study room. There's Yasmin, who went and did this. I think I got better pictures of the frieze, but the frieze around the top, if you go back to Yasmin's original composition, you can't really see it, but it was Marvel characters. It was like a collage of Marvel characters, which of course we can't use. We don't have the image rights to any of that stuff. So I found this in an old publication. I wish I would have a better shot of it now. It's basically old Laurel and Hardy joke of, I can't hear you, I've got a banana in my ear, you know that joke? But it was done by a VCU art student in a publication, a comics publication in 1976. Oh, I should have put notes with that. That would have been a really good thing to do. Anyway, and so the libraries owned the copyright to it. So I was like, oh, I'll take that and put that up on there. But anyway, so this is it getting fitted out. And this is it, you know, the day we moved all the books into it. So, you know, this is, so anyway, so that's the collection, and that's the space that we've created in this, you know, but that's just the beginnings of this idea. As we were building this collection, we came across this idea that it's not enough. This idea of just building this collection is not enough because of providing the comics. Even if we were focusing on collecting Middle Eastern comics as best we could, it wasn't enough to simply do that. This is, over here is Habibi by Craig Thompson. If any of you are familiar with graphic novels, Craig Thompson also wrote Blankets. You know, I don't really want to talk too much about, I'm not very impressed with this graphic novel for a lot of reasons, but you know, this is using the iconography. If you get it wrong, you can't go back. You know, and the imagery, you know, of the Middle East. You know, it's using Arabic script. It's you know, even the title Habibi. You know, it means beloved. I'll get to it in a second. But you know, it doesn't. I mean, that's not representational of any story in contemporary. Any of our students would have, any of our, you know, it's anyway, it looks like a Middle Eastern narrative, but you know, anyway, I don't want to get too much into the idea of some of these things, but you know, I wanted to contrast it with something like Metro by Magdi al-Shafi. You know, this is a story, you know, that's set in the MENA region. It's set in Egypt. It's very much of the place. It's very much of that time. And so I think the idea here, you know, is that one's a New York Times bestseller. And it was in our collection. It was already one of our graphic novels that we had in our collection. I didn't know it until I went out into the stacks and I actually found it. You know, so one of the librarians collected it thinking it was going to be somehow representative for our students. And it might be, but in a different way, for very much than I think it was probably intended. You know, this is not a New York Times bestseller. You know, it's very much, you know, most people who even heard of comics don't even know of like Metro. So the idea that, you know, I think it's important that the comics collection needed to transition into a comics lab, where the idea is that we're trying to empower people to tell their own stories, because if we don't, somebody else is going to tell these stories for them. So we started the comics lab. In March, just this last March, we received official lab status for VCU, and not just VCUarts Qatar, VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University overall. So we're officially a research lab within VCU. That allows us to get greater funding. We've got access to some funding lines that we normally wouldn't have had access to do some projects like we hope we're going to be moving into. You know, already we've hired some student research assistants to start researching the breadth of MENA comics. A lot of stuff is in Arabic, a lot of stuff is in Farsi. You know, and a lot of there's a lot of self-published comics. There's a lot of stuff that's just on the internet. There's a lot of stuff that's very ephemeral that pops up and goes away. So we've got some student research assistants working on 100% trying to find build a catalog or of the publishers, the authors, the people that we should be looking at and trying to find. Let's see. But we also we're thinking about, we're trying to act, the lab is trying to act as like a glue. We're making connections with lots of, there's some startup comic studios in the region. We want to connect those with the academics that we have access to. As a research lab, we also, we're hopefully, part of the reason I'm giving this talk is the idea to publicize this and to try to create collaborations within this. That's over there, that's Magdi. He's from the author of Metro. He's very much on board with this idea. He was very nice giving us a tour of his comic collection in his house, and it was in Egypt. And he's got the glass locked doors, and he opened it up, and it's just like all these Arabic comics, and it was really interesting. This was a panel discussion at Northwestern University. This is another place where I think we can serve as a connection. Northwestern University in Qatar, that's part of the Education City group. And this was on comics of Drawing the South, presentation from comics from the Global South that was presented at Northwestern. They have a couple of academics at Northwestern who are working on the more literature end of comics. So we could act as a connection between those academics, authors, and artists. Incidentally, the second person in here is Andre Tantarol. And if you, in the upcoming issue of Art Libraries Journal, he's written a Viewpoint article that I think is brilliant. So he's a comic book creator, author, and translator from South Africa. So you might want to look out for that. Anyway. All right. Oh, okay. So I guess the other thing I want to say here is, one of the things that we're looking to do is we're thinking with our funding we can act as a publication arm as well. So we can facilitate the production and then the publication of these things, and we're always looking for some sort of collaborators. So if anybody is interested in collaborating or knows of somebody who might be interested in collaborating, if there's an academic who's working in this field, please let me know, contact me. We're happy to start trying to facilitate these connections with everybody. We got some really good ideas of what we might do to move forward. So yeah, so thank you. I guess.